Wow.
Thanks, Matt. We'll give everybody just another minute, maybe two, to get settled, get in. I know it's just after lunch. I'm getting settled here myself. We'll get started in about 1 minute. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Hopefully you can hear me loudly and clearly. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. This is Introduction to Document Accessibility and Microsoft Word Accessibility Training. Thank you to the Department of Management for arranging these sessions and coordinating these. My name is Nathan Zach. I am the Vice President of Accessibility Services for MSF&W Consulting. Also here with us on the call are Melissa Romanato and Tyler Winters, two of our accessibility specialists. I will be kicking things off, doing the first 20-30 minutes here of our session today, and then Melissa and Tyler will take turns leading the rest of our discussion and demonstrations. A little bit of background. MSF&W is an IT consulting firm based in Springfield, Illinois, and accessibility is one of our specialties. Since the year 2000, we've worked with organizations of all types and sizes to ensure that websites and web applications and documents, other information systems, pieces of software, et cetera, are accessible for people with disabilities. The majority of that work has been in the public sector with state government clients, started in the state of Illinois, has expanded significantly since that, or from that. We've provided training, document accessibility remediation, accessibility technical assistance, and everything in between, it seems like. And there's more and more need for it in today's world with different laws and requirements, and it's just becoming more and more part of information technology. So we appreciate the opportunity to continue that relationship with the state of Iowa. We've been working with the state since 2017, I believe, and we appreciate being able to help you sort of grow and expand your knowledge of accessibility and begin incorporating some of those techniques and best practices and things into your day-to-day jobs and operations as you're making information technology assets, whatever those might be, documents, websites, and so on. So today we're going to begin by teaching you about accessibility overall, and then we're going to talk kind of in the second half of today's session about how to use Word to make the most accessible documents possible. Later on, or I guess in other sessions that we're providing, this is kind of the foundational one. The intro and Word accessibility kind of sets the stage for some other sessions that we offer. And those include accessibility within Adobe Acrobat and related to PDF documents directly, PowerPoint, Excel, InDesign, and then we have some other specialized topics as well that we provide similar webinar sessions about kind of more advanced topics, if you will, or more specialized, as I said, about, fillable forms in documents, best practices and what to do with tables, scanned documents, and some others. So trying to give you broad knowledge as you begin to make your documents and things more accessible. Additionally, I think maybe you guys already know, but just another plug that we offer accessibility office hours every Wednesday morning, 9 a.m., I believe. That's a standing session for you to bring your example documents, your questions, your strange errors, whatever it may be, and get support directly from our team in a relatively, informal workshop environment. Share your screen. We'll have you try some things and help you work through it. So please keep those in mind and put those on your calendar when you get in a bind and need some additional support, or just want to come and learn and see what others are doing and see what you can gather from their experiences. A couple housekeeping items before we really get into it for today. Please keep yourself on mute. We will pause periodically and try to answer questions. But if you do have a question as we go, please don't hesitate to type it in the chat. We are monitoring that and we'll answer those things as appropriate. There may be time at the end as well for questions out loud or to ask them to unmute and ask them, but we'll see where the time lands once we get there. But the chat is definitely the best way to get it out there, and we'll definitely get to it that way. And as Matt mentioned before we got started, these sessions are being recorded and the slides have been provided or posted. So you should have those available and can refer back to those in the future if you need a refresher. So let's get into it here. So the goal of today's webinar is to provide an overview of accessibility and then see what you can do to improve the document creation process related to accessibility. We're going to do that by talking about an overview of accessibility. We're going to learn what that term means, what accessibility means in this context, and discuss some different assistive technologies. We're going to introduce you to some basics of PDF documents, and we are going to hear a demonstration of JAWS Screen Reader comparing a user's experience with an accessible PDF versus that of an inaccessible PDF. And then finally, in the last portion, we're going to create an accessible document, show you some tips and tricks, provide some guidance on how you can make the most accessible document possible on your own, using Word and what it's going to take to make the most accessible PDF document possible from that. And then again, all of this sets the stage, helps build your knowledge of accessibility as you begin to implement those in your day-to-day jobs and prepare for what's to come or what you might have already seen in other sessions that we're providing, other accessibility trainings, that is. So what is accessibility? And what are assistive technologies? At its simplest, accessibility means accommodating people with disabilities. We want to be sure that everyone can access and use electronic documents and the web. We want everybody to have access to the same information, be able to put information in, get information out, and so on. We need to consider several different audiences when keeping accessibility in mind and considering assistive technology. We want to think about people with visual impairment, low vision or blindness, for example. We want to think about people with limited use of their hands, right? Might have a different interaction than using the keyboard or a traditional mouse. We want to think about people who are deaf or hard of hearing. And we want to think about people with learning disabilities, probably the largest group and maybe the hardest to accommodate, right? But we got to think about all of these groups when we think about accessibility and information technology and keep them all in mind because it's all a very different interaction. Everybody has different needs. And we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can as a state agency, as a department, as the state overall to put information out there and make it available to everyone. For what it's worth, there are standards out there that help with this. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, for example, those are kind of the most common. Maybe you've heard of them. It's what most states and large government agencies reference in their accessibility laws and rules and best practices. But the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines help tell us what we have to do for accessibility to accommodate end users of assistive technology, end users of technology, period. And throughout this training, we're going to look at how to do some of those things, particularly in Word and PDF and those other softwares, those programs that I mentioned, so that the documents, the final version that gets posted or distributed, are going to work properly for users of assistive technologies. People with disabilities often use what's called assistive technology. I've used that term a couple of times now. Assistive technology is software or hardware that's specialized to assist a person with the use of a computer. And these tools help bridge the gap between the computer, its operating system, the internet browser, the PDF document, whatever it is, and the specific needs of the user. Assistive technologies are very personal, very customizable, very powerful tools that help a user get out of a website or document or whatever what they need to so that they can understand and interact with it. So let's talk about a few examples. People with limited use of their hands might use alternate keyboard or mouse devices. I'm sure you've seen specialized and ergonomic mice. There's different versions out there that are angled or smaller or larger, but there's also trackballs. There's one here on the kind of upper right of our slide here. That's a trackball, and in that scenario, the base stays stationary. The ball itself in the middle is what moves. And then there's customizable buttons around it that allow a user to program and make some kind of shortcuts to make their lives a little bit easier in case they don't have the dexterity to move the mouse around on the desk, as an example. There's also mice you operate with your feet. There's many other options. There's mice you operate with your eyes and many others. So lots of different interaction there for people with limited use of hands. Some people may not be able to use a mouse at all, and they might use a keyboard to interact with a computer. Again, there are lots of specialized or customizable keyboards available. If a standard keyboard isn't sufficient, again, there's split keyboards, there's angled keyboards, with different configurations, different sizes, different feeling, when you press down on the keys, obviously. There's an example here on our slide as well, kind of next to that trackball, also kind of toward the upper right area of the slide. That's called an IntelliKeys, and I know it's probably a little bit small, but the point of it is that it's customizable. It actually is bigger. The keys are bigger. The keys are customizable. The keys are kind of high contrast, right? A kind of highlighter yellow sort of color on the keys with a text or the letter of the key in black, so very easy to see and recognize as well. You can put a key guard over that helps a user kind of narrow in and make sure they're pressing the right key that they intend to, and kind of they can be as efficient as possible and not have to backtrack and delete and re-enter what they're trying to type. Speech recognition software, moving right along here, allows a user to interact with a computer through the use of voice commands. Dragon Professional is the kind of main software product that is intended for speech recognition. Features such as dictation and searching, clicking links as well as buttons, etc., can all be done through the use of specific commands that a user speaks to a computer. Whether we realize it or not, speech recognition technology is kind of part of our daily lives, whether that's Siri or Alexa, our Google Home devices, in-car systems, automated phone systems, there's speech recognition all around us. And so as that's improved, and that technology has advanced over time, so has the use of that same technology for people with disabilities, and that technology as an assistive technology has come a long way, and it's really very powerful. It's not as sort of futuristic as it once was. Now, someone with a visual impairment might simply need to increase the size of the fonts on their computer or enable a mode called high contrast mode on their computer to more easily read what's on the screen. There's a screenshot here on the right that's actually an image of a web page with high contrast mode enabled, but it's difficult to see. So I'm actually going to go out on a limb here and turn on high contrast mode on my laptop right now, so you can see what that's actually like. I'm going to get out of the slideshow for just a minute as we do that. And then I'm going to see if I can make the keyboard shortcut work. Left Alt, left Shift, and print screen. And it's going to ask me, do you want to turn on high contrast mode? Yes, I do. And it's going to take a minute to turn that on because it's working not just for PowerPoint here as I have enabled, but also across my internet browsers throughout my operating system. Anything that will react to it does get changed. It actually does not work for presentation mode, for what that's worth in PowerPoint, just kind of interesting. But you get an idea here that it's going to take, by default anyway, it is customizable, but by default, it's going to take things that are white and make them black, and things that are black and make them white. It's going to sometimes make links a different color. It's going to make it a little easier on the eyes and make things stand out a little bit more. It's going to make it have more contrast. Very, very kind of obvious. It's right there in the name. But you can imagine, this may be very helpful for someone with a visual impairment that has sensitivity to bright white light that's often being beamed at us through our computers. So that's what high contrast mode is. Just a quick demonstration there. And let me see if I can turn that back off. I don't know if you heard that, but it gives me a couple of different tones when it comes on and off, just as an indication in case I'm doing something unintentionally, or just as an indicator of what's happening on the screen or to my computer. So back in the slideshow, more severe visual impairments may require use of a screen magnifier. And it's just what it sounds like. It's going to make larger a portion of the screen, much like a magnifying glass would. And Windows actually has a screen magnifier built in. So I'm going to enable that as well, so you can get a feel for how that works. That is the Windows key and the plus button. And so it gives me it doesn't magnify things right away, but it does give me this toolbar here. Kind of some controls over how much I'm zoomed in, and a couple of other options, some settings and things. Hopefully you can see that here on the screen. As I hit the plus key, you're going to see that it's giving me the ability to zoom in. It's going to magnify what's on the screen, just like I said, just like it's in the name, screen magnifier. And let's take a look at how that works. I'm going to turn it up from 100%, which is standard, normal. I'm going to go to 200%. And so I'm zoomed in here. I'm now seeing 200. Well, actually, I'm seeing a quarter of the screen at the time, at a single time, I believe. So it's kind of divided. If you think about it, it's divided it into quadrants. And as I move my mouse around from left to right, top to bottom, it's sort of just panning around with me. Not using any keyboard commands or anything for this. I'm just moving my mouse around, and it's sort of panning around the screen. Not too bad at 200%, but if I go even 300 or 400%, you can imagine it might really take a lot to read from a website, a document, wherever I'm using this screen magnifier. Be doable, but fairly inefficient. So that's a taste of what the Windows screen magnifier is. There is a product on the market a commercial product called ZoomText. It's kind of the big name in screen magnifying technology. It's much more powerful. It has lots of additional features built in, abilities to customize colors related to your zoom, your magnification. You can change your mouse pointers. You can, there's even a basic screen reader built into it, and many more features. It keeps, fonts very smooth and crisp as opposed to kind of getting pixelated as you zoom in. Higher magnification you go. So much more functionality, much more powerful built in if that basic one isn't doing it for a user. And then finally, the last one on the slide here, a user who is functionally or totally blind is going to use what's known as a screen reader. And a screen reader is software that interprets information from the web page or a document and speaks that information out loud to the user. You may have heard of JAWS screen reader. That's the most common one on the market. That's the one that's been around the most and probably the most popular. And if we think about it for a minute, using a mouse isn't very efficient for someone, a user who is blind, right? They might be able to operate the mouse physically, move it around on their desk, but a mouse has a visual interaction component to it as well. You need to be able to see the screen, see the mouse pointer to know what you're clicking, where you're pointing, and so on. So a user who's blind is going to interact and operate a screen reader by use of a specialized set of keyboard commands. They're only going to use the keyboard to read and navigate and interact with the website or a document or their operating system as a whole. Very different mode of interaction, obviously. I will point out that the term screen reader, excuse me, is not necessarily correct, a bit of a misnomer. It's not actually reading what we visually might see on the screen. Rather, it's looking behind the scenes at code and some other indication of underlying structure to gather information and provide that out loud to the user. So again, it's not looking at what we're seeing here on the screen as an example. A screen reader would actually be looking behind the scenes to read that text, to understand kind of the markup, if you will, around it, whether it's in a document or on a web page, and taking that structure and presenting that information, that text out loud with that information to the user. Melissa is going to demonstrate JAWS for us in just a few minutes, and I think that's really going to help us understand that interaction and what that experience is like for the user within a PDF document. But first, she's going to take over now and give us a little bit of background about PDF documents and the format, and teach us some terminology and things so that we can be prepared as we go forward. I'm going to stop sharing now, Melissa, and you can take over when you're ready.
I should unmute. Thank you, Nathan. Hopefully you all are seeing my screen now. You should be seeing a slide called PDF Behind the Scenes. So I want to talk a little bit about how a PDF is constructed before we look at the demo of JAWS to get a sense of how it's constructed and how JAWS is using and interpreting the information from the PDF document to communicate it. So I want to say, first of all, that we recommend PDFs for publishing documents on the web or other electronic distribution when putting the content in a web page is not an option. So that's to say that a web page is going to be the most robust, most accessible format for example, a screen reader user or other assistive technology users. However, PDFs are best for after a web page. It's the best document type to use for distributing PDFs. It has the most robust experience for documents. It's fine to create your documents elsewhere, for example, Word or maybe PowerPoint somewhere else, but the final accessible version should be in PDF format. So with an accessible PDF as a goal, we just kind of need to understand how that PDF is structured. So PDF stands for Portable Document Format. It was originally created by the printing industry to ensure consistency from one printer to another. So in other words, I have something, I print it out, I send it to you electronically, you print it out, it looks exactly the same to both of us. But over the years, PDF became a standard format for sharing documents and posting documents on the web. And the structure behind the scenes kind of got updated to accommodate accessibility over time. So an accessible PDF document is made up of three parts. There's the physical view, which is the visual part that you see on the screen. It's matched by what comes out of your printer when you print it. And this is what most people think of as a PDF, is just that physical view. But there's also a content layer, and that's where the text and the images that actually make up the content of the document lives. And that's what is used, for example, if you're in a PDF document and you use search, for example, it's searching that content layer. That's where all the words actually live, and images. And then finally, the tags layer indicates the structure of the content in the PDF. So this is the layer that was created to allow for accessibility. Some of you might be familiar with HTML and HTML markup. And similar to that, tags indicate, okay, this is a paragraph, this is an image, this is a heading, and what level that heading is, this is a list item, etc. So it provides information about the structure and the roles of each piece of content. It also provides information about the reading order or sequence and navigation for assistive technologies. So editing or editing tags does not have an effect on the look of the document. That's kind of, there's a separate layer, right? So the physical view should always remain the same, even though we're going to be focusing on, the tags layer for accessibility. I do want to remind you that a PDF cannot be accessible without tags. If it does not have that tags layer, it cannot be accessible. But just because it has tags doesn't mean it's accessible. There are things we need to make sure are correct in those tags. And we'll get to that kind of in our next session after this one, where we actually work within Acrobat to remediate PDFs. Today, we're going to start just by focusing on Word and what we can do in our source document to make it as accessible as possible. But before we do that, I want to show you a demonstration of what a screen reader user experiences when they are navigating through a PDF document. So I'm going to close out of my slideshow here. I'm going to start JAWS screen reader, and I'm also going to open a document here for us to listen to. I'm going to reshare my screen real quick here, because I don't think I shared my screen. And that's kind of important for this.
Annual report dash Adobe Acrobat reader left parent third dash mid right parent.
I'm going to give it a second to catch up to my moving around here. All right.
Demo1.pdf. Volume up, volume up, volume up, volume up.
All right, so you should be seeing my screen. You're seeing a PDF document. It's got an Iowa logo, some words, pictures. I'm also going to use a keyboard command right now just to go to the top of my document.
Demo1.pdf.
And I'm hopefully going to get some confirmation that you're hearing JAWS screen reader saying demo1.pdf. Yes, thank you. Appreciate that confirmation. If the volume is too low, feel free to raise a hand or throw a note in the chat to let me know. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell from here how it comes through sounding to you guys. All right, so I started JAWS, and one of the first things I did is I used the control key to shut JAWS up. So as Nathan mentioned, JAWS is a screen reader. It's going to read things to me, but it doesn't really just read things to me passively, right? As a screen reader user, I have control, and I have control over navigating through the document and how I want to receive the information. So I'm going to control JAWS with some keyboard commands. I'm not going to use my mouse with JAWS because, as Nathan mentioned before, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm going to go to the top of the document.
Demo1.pdf.
And I'll hear the file name to confirm that I opened the document I thought. It said demo1.pdf. I'm going to down arrow.
Iowa graphic.
And I heard Iowa graphic. So JAWS gave me some information that I don't get, gave me auditory information that matches what you see visually. So I can tell by looking at it that the word Iowa is an image. It's kind of stylized. It has this horizon and sun and road in the O. I think it might have a tiny little trademark or some kind of registered mark in the lower right-hand corner of the image. So I can tell that that's an image, but JAWS actually says the word graphic, and that lets you know that you've encountered an image. And when it encounters an image, it not only says graphic, it then reads what we call the alternative text for that image. So it said graphic Iowa. So Iowa is the alternate text that was provided by the document author. JAWS isn't magic. You can't read all those little pixels in an image and know that it makes up the shapes of the letters IOWA, but it can say what the end user provided or the document creator provided as the alternate text. I'm going to down arrow again.
Heading level 1 annual report C : users / Melissa Romanato / desktop / overview and word / demo1.pdf 2 pages.
Okay, so JAWS said a lot of stuff. First thing I'm going to do before I go any farther is I'm actually going to slow JAWS down to make it hopefully a little bit easier for everyone to understand. So let me do that real quick.
JAWS professional. Although options voice adjustment enter leaving menus voice delete the voice function voice rate : 85 left right slider 40% to increase or decrease use the arrow keys.
So right now I'm listening to it at about 40% of the speed it goes. I'm going to turn it down.
30, 33, 21, 29, 18, 17, 16, 15%, 58.
Let's stop here at 15%.
Enter. Annual report dash.
Okay, so I guess I want to say as a note, so again, I was only listening to JAWS at 40% of its speed. It goes way faster. Most folks who are using a screen reader every day, all day, will listen to it very, very fast. They will usually listen to it at over 100 words a minute and sometimes much faster than that. So it's very difficult for those of us who aren't used to it to understand it at those speeds. And so I'm slowing it down for us to about 15% of where it goes. I also want to comment on the sound of JAWS's voice. Sometimes folks complain, they're like, why does it sound so mechanical? We've got other things that sound a little more human, Siri and some of our other Alexa or whatever. You can still tell they're not a human voice, but they're a little more human sounding than this synthesized voice is here. And the reason is actually on purpose. So when you listen to JAWS at a very fast rate of speed, having that more non-human sounding voice actually keeps the pieces of sound crisper, and it doesn't kind of smush together. So it's easier to listen to at a higher rate of speed with the more mechanical voice, just in case you were wondering, because sometimes people hear it for the first time and say, oh my God, it's awful. How could you listen to that all day? First of all, you get used to it. And second of all, you realize that you're much more efficient with that voice. Okay, let me get back to, I was on the heading in the document. So let's get there.
SWOT analysis heading.
I went too far.
Annual report C : back.
Okay, let me do a keyboard command here so you can hear it again.
Heading level 1 annual report C :
Okay, I'm going to interrupt it. So we heard heading level 1 annual report. And then we heard C : backslash and some other stuff. The C : backslash is actually the file path of where this file lives on my machine. There is a bug in the current version of JAWS that reads that out loud when it reads the level 1 heading of a document. So we'll pretend that didn't happen because that's going to go away and be fixed here in the near future. But what's important is JAWS not only read the text annual report, but it told me it was a heading level 1. So it's giving me some information that I can kind of see visually through speaking it aloud. So I can tell that the annual report text is, bigger, it's bolder, it's centered, it looks like it's the main topic of my document. And JAWS conveys that by saying heading level 1. It's kind of talking about in the structure of the document, right? So this is the main topic of my document. And real quick, we've got a question about JAWS in the chat here. Is it free? No, unfortunately, JAWS is not free. It's a very powerful software. It works with PDF as we're seeing it today. It works with your email client. It works with your browser. It works with all of your products. It's a multi-use, use all day, every day software for folks who need it. And the license, and Nathan, I'm not sure if you're still here, but if he is, he might be able to correct me on the most recent costs. I want to say it's about anywhere from $1,100 to $1,500. That gives you the current version plus 2 upgrade versions, and it usually upgrades every year. So basically for 3 versions of JAWS, there are, you know, when organizations are buying it, there are some discounts for multiple licenses and things like that. And a lot of times folks who are using JAWS have it, you know, purchased through their job, certainly to help them do their work, and then sometimes have some outside resources to purchase it for home use as well. Good questions. All right, let's keep arrowing through our document.
Heading level 2 SWOT analysis.
Okay, the next thing I heard was heading level 2 SWOT analysis. So this lets me know I'm in the first subsection of my document by telling me heading level 2. So I understand that structure.
A. Link SWOT analysis.
And so it said the word A, and then it said link SWOT analysis. So I can identify a link usually because it's typically blue or some other color. It's underlined. If I hover my mouse over it, it turns from a pointer into a hand, so I know it's clickable. JAWS just says the word link, and then the user knows if I want to follow that link, I can go ahead and use the enter key and follow it. So I'm going to keep arrowing down.
Is a simple yet effective tool that can support a department's needs assessment.
All right, I'm going to keep reading.
List of 2 items.
Okay, and I heard something kind of interesting. I heard list of 2 items. So visually, I can see that I'm coming on a list. It's got a couple bulleted items and a couple sub lists. And JAWS actually gives me that information as I come into it. So I kind of know and understand that structure. I'm encountering a list of 2 items.
Bullet. What are the department's key strengths?
There's my first item.
List of 2 items nesting level 1.
And now JAWS says list of 2 items nesting level 1. So now I know that nested under my first list item, I have a nested list of 2 items. So I'm going to arrow down to hear those.
Bullet. What are our advantages? Bullet. What do we do well? List end nesting level 1.
And JAWS just said list end nesting level 1. So now I know my nested list has ended. And as I continue to read, I'm going to be back in my main list.
Bullet. What are the department's key weaknesses? Left parent key needs are not being met to sustain success. Right parent colon.
All right, I'm going to arrow again.
List of 3 items nesting level 1.
So now I have another nested list under my second list item. It's got 3 items in it.
Bullet. Where do we struggle and need to improve? Bullet. Are we lacking skills, knowledge, technology? Bullet. What are the unmet expectations? List end nesting level 1.
Out of that nested list.
List end.
And then I hear list end. So my main list has ended as well. So all of that I can kind of see visually in a glance, the relationships between those list items and how they're nested. And JAWS just conveys that same information with words as I listen. I'm going to keep arrowing through the document.
Heading level 2 judicial districts.
Got a new subsection.
Heading level 3 District 1 counties.
And now I have a subsection under my judicial district. So I heard heading level 3.
Howard, Wenneshiek, Alameda, Chickasaw, Fayette, Clayton, Grundy, Black Hawk, Buchanan, Delaware, and Dubuque.
All right, it's just reading the paragraph. You'll notice JAWS probably mispronounced some of those. I honestly can't tell because I don't know how to pronounce them all as a non-Iowan. But do keep in mind that, you know, when you're writing or whatever when you're thinking about screen readers and assistive technologies, you don't have to do anything special. Screen readers, users can navigate. I could navigate by character if I want to have something spelled out to me. Maybe I couldn't understand what JAWS said, but I want to spell it out. So the user can control those things. You just want to write as you normally do.
Heading Level 3 District 2 Counties.
So now I'm in District 2. I'll hear that list.
Winnebago, Worth, Mitchell, Hancock, Cerro Gordo, Floyd, Pocahontas, Humboldt, Wright, Franklin, Butler, Bremer, Sac, Calhoun, Webster, Hamilton, and Marshall.
And now I'm going to continue down.
Blank.
JAWS says blank. Sometimes you get used to it. Sorry, I see there's a quick question that I missed. How does a screen reader determine whether to read an acronym as a full word or spell it out letter by letter, or is it controlled by the user? Great question. If JAWS can pronounce an acronym, it will. So basically, typically if there's a vowel in it, like our SWOT, S-W-O-T acronym, JAWS will pronounce it if it can. Say that it did not have an O in it, say it was just S-W-T, JAWS would spell SWT. So if it can pronounce it, it will try to. If it can't, it will spell it. Good question. All right. JAWS just said blank. I said JAWS says that sometimes. You get used to it and you learn to ignore it. It says it a lot less than it used to. It's getting better over time. I'm going to down arrow again.
Heading Level 3 District 3 Counties.
I'm now in the second column in my District 3 counties over here. So it read down that left column and now it's reading over down the right column.
Lyon, Osceola, Dickinson, Emmett, Kossuth, Sioux, O'Brien, Clay, Palo Alto, Plymouth, Cherokee, Ida, Monadnock, and Crawford. Heading Level 3 District 4 Counties. Harrison, Shelby, Audubon, Pottawatomie, Cass, Mills, Montgomery, Fremont, and Page.
All right, I'm going to down arrow again.
Heading Level 2 Metrics and measures used to monitor ICN operations.
I actually moved to my to the second page of the document. Some of you might have noticed there was an image at the bottom of the document that JAWS ignored. That's because that image has been marked as decorative by the document author. We talked before about the logo image, Iowa. The document author provided alternate text that explained the meaning of the image, so that can be conveyed via assistive technologies. When an image is decorative, we can mark it as such, and then it's known, this could say the screen reader knows it's safe to ignore. And we'll talk about that a little more as we create our document. We'll talk all about alt text. All right, so I'm at the top of page 2. I heard my heading for metrics and measures. I'm going to down arrow.
Table with 4 columns and 5 rows.
Okay, again, JAWS is giving me a little information about what's to come. I'm encountering a table. It gives me the dimensions of the table. It's 4 columns and 5 rows, so I kind of know what I'm getting into. And if I down arrow, I'm going to move into that table.
Goals.
I hear the first cell.
Strategies/actions. Measures. Metrics.
And if I keep down arrowing, it's just going to read across row by row. So let me do that.
1. Ensure planning is optimized for network utilization. Regularly review network utilization measures to assess need for any network architecture changes. Percentage of network utilization.
Okay, so this is a small table as an example, but you can get a sense of how quickly and how quickly you can lose your place in the table, right? I know it was 4 columns. I hit down arrow a bunch of times. I heard percentage of network utilization, but maybe I don't exactly remember where I am. So I can use some special keyboard commands called table reading commands. That's going to tell me. So I'm going to use the where am I command.
Column 3, row 2, measures 1. Ensure planning is optimized for network utilization. Percentage of network utilization.
Okay, so I heard a lot of info. I heard that I was in column 3, row 2. I also heard the value of the column header, measures, and also the row header, 1, ensuring planning is optimized for network utilization. And then I heard the contents of the current cell, percentage of network utilization. So because this table was designed with accessibility in mind, the screen reader is able to use those table reading commands to say exactly where am I, and it has those row and column headers that are associated with the data cell. And maybe I'm only interested in the measures, so I can also use my table reading command to just read down the column.
2. Operate and maintain the critical infrastructure core for network availability and uptime. Left parent E911. Healthcare National Guard. Right parent. Percentage of core network uptime. Row 3.
So this time it didn't read the measures header again, the column header again, because I just stayed down in the same column, but it did read what changed, which was my row header. So this is goal number 2. It read that, and then it read the value of the current cell. And I can do the same thing. Like now if I move, maybe I want to move to the left or the right, either one. I'll move right just so you can hear it read some numbers. I'll move to the right.
Metrics. Current year target, 99.999%. Prior year actual, 100%. Column 4.
Oh, column 4, sorry. So again, it just read what changed. It read the column header this time since I moved over to a new column. It didn't repeat the row header. So it really allows a screen reader user to navigate a table and get the full information. And in a really big table, it's super powerful. I mean, I know sometimes for me on the screen, you know, you're holding one hand in the row and one in the column and trying to get them to meet. With a screen reader, that information is just available at your fingertips. One other note, you might have noticed JAWS reads some punctuation and not other punctuation. So for example, it was reading some parentheses for us. It was reading colons, percent signs. On the other hand, JAWS does not read things like commas or periods. It just pauses in its speech, just like you or I would pause if we're reading something out loud. This is the default settings for what we call JAWS's verbosity, or how much punctuation it reads. Those are user configurable, FYI. So again, don't need to do anything different with that. You don't need to spell anything out. You don't want to avoid using parens or colons or commas or anything like that. You just do your regular stuff, and then JAWS has its way of dealing with it, which is also configurable by the end user. So I'm just going to move down this metrics column till I get to the end of my table.
3 and 4. Enable effective internal finance processes. Current year target, 95%. Prior year actual, 96%. Bottom of column.
And then I heard bottom of column, so I know I'm done at the end of that column. If I down arrow again,
table end.
It says table end. So I'm no longer in the table. I can no longer use those special table reading commands. They only work when I'm in a table. Going to continue down.
Heading level 3, goal progress.
Another heading.
Goal 1, prior year equals 25%. Current year equals 70% graphic.
Okay, so I heard a couple things there. I heard some of the information. Goal 1, I heard prior year equals 25%, current year equals 70%, and I heard the word graphic. So because this is a graphic, I know JAWS is reading the alternate text. If I continue to arrow down, it will continue reading the rest of the alternate text.
Goal 2, prior year equals 100%. Current year equals 99% graphic. Goal 3, prior year equals 9%. Current year equals 15% graphic. Goal 4, prior year equals 96%. Current year equals 95% graphic. Goal 4, prior year equals...
I'm at the end. So again, we're going to talk about alternate text and how to write it, but you can see that the screen reader user is hearing that exact same information that's presented visually in this bar chart. Okay, now, especially in a longer document, it would be super tedious for a user to just arrow down and read through the whole document, and they wouldn't typically do that. So let me show you some special keyboard commands that a screen reader user can use to kind of skim a document and move around more efficiently. So first of all, I can use what are called quick navigation keys. I'm going to use the H key, and I'm going to move between all the headings in the document.
Wrapping to top. Annual report C: /users SWOT analysis heading level 2. Judicial districts heading level 2. District 1 counties heading level 3.
So now I'm just moving between the headings. I can get to where I want to be, and then I can start down arrowing and read what's in that section. I can also do that backwards.
Judicial districts heading level 2. SWOT analysis heading level 2.
Or I can move from particular heading levels to heading levels. I can also bring up a list of all the headings in a document.
Heading list dialog. Headings list view. Annual reports.
I'm going to make it stop talking there. So it brings up a list of all the headings in the document. It tells me the heading text, and then it gives a number afterwards. That's the heading level. And that allows me to quickly skim a document, find the section I want, and then move right to it and start reading. So if I'm only interested in the District 2 counties.
SWAT Judicial District 1, District 2 counties, :3, 5 of 9. Enter. Heading level 3, District 2 counties. Head Winnebago, Worth, Mid.
And I can just start reading in that section. So that makes it possible for me to skim the document. I can also bring up a list of links in the document. So maybe if you have a document with more links than this one.
Links list dialog. Links list view. SWOT analysis 1 of 1. To move to items, use the arrow keys.
Maybe I'm just looking for a link to news or, something that's the latest and information I need. I can bring up this links list. I can move to the link, and I have two choices. I can either move to that point in the document and read what's after or around the link, or I can simply activate the link from this window and actually click the link from this window. So that saves a lot of time as well. I can move between focusable elements, which would be links and form fields. I don't have form fields in this document, but using the tab key. I can also move between list items. I can move between tables. If there are multiple tables in the document, I can bring up a list of them. So I really have a lot of control over how I navigate this document. Okay. Let me switch documents real quick. I'm going to open
Overview and Word.
Another document.
Leaving menus. Overview and Word. Items view. Demo2.pdf demo2.pdf.
And this document looks visually exactly like the document I just listened to. I'm going to listen to this one a little more quickly because I don't want to take a whole lot of time, but I want you to have the experience too of what a screen reader user might encounter when they have a document that was not created with accessibility in mind. So document looks the same, physical view is the same. Actually, even our content view is the same, but that tags layer is different.
Demo2.pdf.
Okay, I'm going to down arrow.
Logo graphic.
I heard logo graphic. It doesn't actually tell me what it's a logo of or why I care, but I'll keep down arrowing.
3 graphic.
Now I heard 3 graphic.
Chart.xls graphic.
Chart.xls graphic. So in this case, it looks like the reading order is kind of messed up. I've got all the images at the beginning of the document, and none of the images provide alternate text that is useful to me. It's either reading the file name of the image, or it's something very generic that doesn't give me any information about the meaning of the image. I'm going to continue arrowing.
Heading level 1 annual report C:// heading level 2 SWOT analysis.
I've got my heading level 1, my heading level 2. That sounds good. I kind of know where I am at least now.
A. Link SWOT analysis is a simple yet effective tool that can support a department's needs assessment.
All right, that's the same as before, nothing new.
List of 7 items.
Okay, now I just heard list of 7 items. Because we're looking at it visually, we know, and because we heard it before, that it's actually a list of 2 items with some nested lists, but this just says list of 7 items, so I'm going to arrow through them.
Bullet, what are the department's key strengths? Bullet, what are our advantages? Bullet, what do we do well? Bullet, what are the department's key weaknesses? Left parent key needs are not being met to sustain success. Right parent call. Bullet, where do we struggle and need to improve? Bullet, are we lacking skills, knowledge, technology? Bullet, what are the unmet expectations? List end.
Okay, so I got the same information, but I don't really understand the relationship between those list items. I don't know that some are sub-list items. I just heard it as one big list.
Heading level 2 judicial districts. Heading level 4 District 1 counties. District 3 counties.
Okay, I'm going to keep arrowing.
Howard, Wenneshiek, Allamakee, Chickasaw, Lyon, Osceola, Dickinson, Emmett, Kossuth, Fayette, Clayton, Grundy, Black Hawk, Sioux, O'Brien, Clay, Palo Alto, Plymouth.
Okay, this might be a little hard to tell over the screen, but what JAWS is doing now is it's actually reading across those columns. So I heard District 1 counties, District 3 counties. Then I heard Howard, Wenneshiek, Allamakee, Chickasaw, Lyon, Osceola. So it's going across instead of down the left column and then down the right column, which it was doing before. So this was probably created not by using the columns feature in Word. They might have used the tab key to move things over, or maybe it's a layout table where everything is in, a cell so that it's grouped that way. It's hard to know for sure. I'm going to keep reading down the document. I'm going to actually move to our table.
Table with 4 columns and 5 rows. Column 1, row 1, goals.
Okay, so I got my table. I'm going to go ahead and start using my table reading commands. I'm going to read down this goals column for a couple.
1. Ensure planning is 2. Operate and maintain the critical infrastructure core for net.
Okay, I'm going to move over a couple.
Plan, percentage of core network uptime, column 3.
Okay, so I got to this percentage of core network uptime field in column 3, row 3. I'm going to use my where am I command because I'm lost. I want to know what my row and column headers are.
Column 3, row 3, percentage of core network uptime.
All right, this time JAWS did tell me I was in column 3, row 3, but it did not read my column header measures or my goal, which is goal number 2. So I'm missing that information, and that's because of the way this table was created by the document author. They did not indicate which cells have column and row headers. So I can't get that extra information, and I'm really just kind of moving through this table. I might have to go all the way back up to the top to figure out which column I'm in, go all the way to the left to figure out which row I'm in. So much less efficient than our previous example. And I'm going to stop there with my demonstration because I want to get moving into what we actually need to do in Word to create the good version of this document. So I'm going to turn JAWS off.
Unloading space.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Tyler is going to take over for us. He's going to share his screen and get us started on creating an accessible document in Word.
That's right. Can you hear me, everybody?
Yes, we can.
Okay, awesome.
Yes, we can.
I had to unplug my microphone at one point, and I know plugging that back in can cause some issues. So, okay. So we've covered a lot of ground already and learned so much already this afternoon, but now it's time to dive into how we can actually create the most accessible document possible using Word. So Word is an incredibly powerful tool, and it's designed with thoughtful features to make our work easier and more efficient. A lot of very smart people built these features to help us automate tasks and streamline our processes. So that's something we should actually take advantage of. And just by understanding these built-in tools and leveraging them the way they're intended, we can take much of the guesswork out of accessibility. And the best part about it all is if we use Word as it's meant to be used, accessibility won't feel like an extra step. It will just naturally follow along into our workflow. And that's kind of the best part. So this is where we kind of dive into Word's features. It'll be like things like heading styles, columns, lists, links, images, alt text, data tables, color contrast. And these are the same elements that we saw in the sample document Melissa demonstrated with JAWS earlier. So, and the truth is, when you use these features as they're designed to be used, you're not just making your documents more accessible, you're actually making your own life easier as a document creator, because by following these best practices, many of these accessibility features just carry over automatically into a PDF document as well. And that's ultimately, that's our main goal that we're trying to achieve here. So I'm actually going to switch gears for a moment, and I'm going to hop out of the PowerPoint presentation so we can enter the demo portion of this training. So everything that I'm going to be talking about from here on out is it's mentioned within the slides that you guys have previously received. So if you have those slides handy, feel free to continue to use those to follow along. I'm going to open up a text-only Word document, and we're going to walk through the steps or best practices on how to actually format that content correctly so that we can make the most accessible document. I have that pulled up, so I'm just going to pull it over here. I'm going to zoom in because so you guys can see better. Okay, so normally you'd start with a blank document, but for the sake of time, and so you don't have to watch me type, we have a document with all the text from our sample document already included. There's no images, it's nothing fancy, it's just, you know, plain text, and we're going to go ahead and transform this into the document that we saw earlier, that we saw Melissa demoing. So you want to think of this as a, you want to think of it as a scenario where maybe you've copied text and information from another document, or maybe someone sent it to you and you've pasted it into Word. And now your task is to sort of clean this up and format it to look the way that you want. So with our document open, the first step in creating an accessible document is we want to add a meaningful title in the document's properties. We're going to start here first because it is an easy step to forget if you don't do it right away. Now, the title should not be confused with the file name. The file name and the title are different things. The file name is primarily used for you know, your organization and storage purposes, whereas the title gives your document a meaningful name, and it is actually what assistive technologies like screen readers use to identify the document. It's also the name that appears in the browser tab for what it's worth, like if the document is opened online, and that can just be helpful for everyone. So to add a title, we want to go to the File tab up here in the ribbon. I'm going to click that, and then we want to click on Info, and Info is over here in the left sidebar. And then we want to look for the Properties section, which is right here off to the right. And then we want to find the title box. And from here, this is where you would enter a clear and descriptive title that you know, reflects the content of your document. We know that this is an annual report document, so I'm just going to go ahead and name it Annual Report. And we can maybe be a little bit more specific. It's 2025. Let's just say it's Annual Report for 2025. And then, yeah, so we've got that added. We can head back to our document now. And just taking that small step, it really does ensure your document is more accessible, and it's going to provide a better experience for everybody going forward. So now that we are back in the document, we're going to go ahead and start near the top of the document, and we're going to focus on headings first. Now, headings are essential because they provide structural markup to establish a clear hierarchy within your document. You want to kind of think of headings as like an outline. You know, headings show how information is related and how it's organized, making it easier for everyone to navigate. And for users of assistive technologies, headings allow screen readers to skim through a document efficiently, and it allows them to jump directly to the sections they need. And we saw Melissa demoing that with JAWS. She pulled up a little window with all of the headings listed. It's just an easier way for someone who needs to use a screen reader to skim the content, especially a large document, to get to where they need. So also for all users, headings just make the content visually and structurally easier to follow. Plus, headings play a key role in automatically generating a table of contents, and that can save you time and effort later on. So if you have a large document and you need a table of contents, those headings automatically generate it for you. So definitely want to use those. So before we start adding headings to this particular document, there is an important note to make when it comes to headings. You do not want to create headings by simply changing the font size or making the text bold or adding colors. So we don't want to, so we know this annual report is going to be our main heading because we saw that in the sample document. We don't want to go ahead and just select that text and just make it bigger in the font size option, bold it, underline it, and then change its color. Okay. Although that looks like, you know, while these changes might look like headings visually, they won't necessarily include that necessary accessibility information that we need. Instead, what we want to do is we want to use Word's built-in styles feature to bring that information over. So I'm going to go ahead and Control-Z and go back to what we had before. So to apply a heading style correctly, what we want to do is we want to go to the Home tab on the ribbon, which we're currently in, and we can tell because Home is underlined here. And what we want to do is we want to look for the Styles section. The Styles section is right here. And from here, you can choose predefined styles like heading 1 or heading 2. And if you need more options, you can click the small arrow right here in the bottom right corner. And this is going to open up the styles pane on the right side of your screen. I hope you can see it okay. I can't zoom in and make this any bigger, but this pane can make it easier to preview and select the appropriate heading styles. And if you don't see previews, like a preview of what those heading styles are going to look like, you can check the box labeled Show Preview here at the bottom to enable them. So if this is off, this is the default setting. But if you want to see those, see what your heading styles look like, just check that box. So with the Styles pane open, let's go ahead and convert some of this content into actual headings. And we're just going to use the Styles pane to do this. So we know that Annual Report is going to be a heading 1. So I've clicked on Annual Report, the Annual Report line. I'm just going to go over here to the Styles pane and click heading 1. And then I'm going to go through and do this to the rest of the headings. I know SWOT Analysis is going to be a heading 2. Click that, click heading 2. Judicial Districts is also a heading 2. And Metrics and Measures used to monitor ICN operations down here at the bottom is also going to be a heading 2. And we also have a few heading 3s. I think we reserved those for the district counties. Go ahead and click on those. Just come over here. Okay, so now since our headings are in place, I should mention that this is also where you can actually modify or style your headings or paragraphs the right way. And what's also nice about this is if you already have your headings in place, like we do now, and decide later that you want to change the look or feel of your heading 2s, for instance, you can do so here. And when you update them here in the Styles pane, all the heading 2s in the document will be updated all at once. And I can show you how that's done. So right now our heading 2s are, they're blue, a little bit bolded, a little bit bigger. But let's say I want to change the heading 2s. So what I can do is come over here to the Styles pane. And when I hover over heading 2, there is a little drop-down arrow. We could click that. And then we want to select Modify. Then it brings up this little pop-up window, Modify Style pop-up window. And this is where we can modify the styles here. So if we want to make the heading 2s a little bigger, we can do so. Let's just make them 26. And let's maybe we want them to be green and underlined. And we'll just say OK. And you can see once we hit OK, all of our heading 2s in this document were actually updated. So this is particularly useful because now you don't have to go through one by one throughout a document and update your heading styles. Just doing it here in the global styles or the styles pane globally changes everything. So I'm going to go ahead and Control Z to bring that back. I should also mention that when working with headings, it's important to remember that in most cases, there should only be one heading 1 in the document, and this is typically reserved for the main title or topic heading of the document. So in our case, we have Annual Report. This is what this document is. It's an annual report. That's our heading 1. So other sections should be broken up by other sections broken up by headings should use heading 2s, heading 3s, and so on to continue on and create that clear hierarchy without overusing the highest level heading, which is the heading 1. Also, when using headings, it's important not to skip heading levels as you move forward in your document. So you don't want to jump from heading 1 directly to heading 3. You always want to follow the proper order, like heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, and so on. But it is perfectly fine to go backwards, such as moving from a heading 3 back to a heading 2, because this actually maintains the document's logical structure and hierarchy. So following this practice just ensures that your document is both well organized and accessible for everyone. So just to recap on headings, by using Word's built-in heading styles, you're ensuring accessibility, but also laying a solid foundation for a well-structured document, one that's easy to read, one that's easy to navigate, and then one that's also easy or better converted into other formats like PDFs. So I'm going to close the styles pane once we're done with that. So with all of our headings in place, let's go ahead and move to our next word feature, and that is lists. If we remember in the sample doc, there were, I think we had 2 main bullet points, and each bullet point contains some sub-lists or nested lists under them. So let's go ahead and mark up what should be the list content in this document. So to do that, I'm going to select all of the content that I want to appear in my list. And I know that all of the questions were list items. So I'm going to just go ahead and highlight all of the questions here. Now, once I have my content selected, I'm going to go ahead and head to the Home tab's Paragraph section. Again, we're in the Home tab already. Paragraph section is right here. And then I'm just going to click on the bulleted list option right there. And you can see that our bulleted list has been created. But remember, we have 2 main bullets with nested lists. I believe the first bullet item has 2 nested lists. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select those 2 list items. And you can do this one of 2 ways. With those selected or highlighted, I can hit the Tab key, and that moves them and nests them appropriately. Also, the other way I could do this is I can select the other nested list items, or the other questions that we want to make nested list items. And then I can kind of go, or I could go up to the paragraph section again and just click the right indent option. And again, both the right indent or right increase indent and the tab option work for this. Additionally, if you want to change the bullet styles, you can do so. I believe in our sample document, these were solid black. The nested bullets were. So to change those, I've just clicked on the first bullet icon. And with those all highlighted, I can go up to the bullet icon again, but this time I'm going to click on the drop-down arrow next to it. And this is where you can change your styles. I've got a solid black disk. They've got a square, solid black square. Then they've got 4 diamonds, an arrow, and a check mark. We're just going to go ahead and make this match the parent bullet item, list item. And there we go. So also something to note, Word is pretty smart about lists. It will often automate this process for you. So I'm sure many of us are aware that if you type, let's say, the number 1 and then a period and then hit the space bar or enter, it's already going to start a list for us, in a numbered list for us. With proper indentation and formatting. The same thing will happen when you use dashes or asterisks. So I'm going to add an asterisk, hit enter, or I'm sorry, hit spacebar, and it's going to start a bulleted list for us there. So, I want to mention that because it doesn't necessarily happen with pasted content. So Word might not initially recognize dashes or asterisks as part of a list. Instead, it might leave them in there as plain text. And that's what we're kind of simulating here, a scenario where we've copied and pasted information from another document, and now we need to format it correctly. So whether your list is ordered, that's with numbers, or unordered with bullets, we want to make sure we're utilizing Word's built-in list feature to ensure proper formatting and accessibility. So if you do receive a document, or you have a document that has asterisks or dashes, you just want to make sure that it's actually using the Word's built-in list option. Okay, so now that we are done with lists, we can move on to columns. So under judicial districts, we've got 4 sections of counties information. And we want to break up this information into columns to give this document a more, I guess, pleasing look and maybe make it a bit easier to digest the information. So before we get into how to do just that, I think it's important to note how not to do that. We want to make sure, like Melissa said earlier, we want to make sure we avoid using tabs, spaces, or tables with hidden borders to create the appearance of columns. While those methods might look fine visually, they can actually cause some serious reading order issues for assistive technologies, which we saw in her demo. So in that bad example, the columns were created by using tabs and spaces, and because of that, the content was read across the row instead of down each column, and it just wrapped incorrectly, and it created confusion. Although a sighted user might be able to read it just fine, digest that information just fine, somebody using a screen reader would have gotten wrong information. So the right way to apply columns is to use Word's built-in columns feature. And that's so we can ensure the content flows, in the correct reading order. So to do that, we want to start by selecting the text that we want to format. And in this case, we know we want to take the district counties sections and highlight those. And then we're going to go to the layout tab up here. And then we want to find the page setup group, which is this first group of buttons. And we just want to click on columns. So we're going to click on the columns button. And from there, you can see that you could choose from a preset options like 2 or 3 columns, or you can customize the layout to fit your needs. We're going to go ahead and select 2 column. And as you can see, Word makes this process super simple. So you don't actually have to worry about manually adjusting spacing or alignment. It just looks good by default. And the best part is that we've still ensured that the content will be read correctly and in the right order. So because we use the columns feature to properly format these columns, we've made sure that our document not only looks professional, but it's also accessible and easy to navigate for everyone. Plus, it's just way quicker to do it this way. If you happen to be creating columns by using spacing and tabs or tables or whatever, this way is way faster than that, and it's the correct way. So once you start making your columns this way, you won't use them. You won't create them any other way going forward. Okay, so let's move on to links now. Word is pretty smart about links as well. You've probably noticed that if you type a web address URL or an email address, Word's going to recognize that, and it's going to automatically convert it into a clickable link once you press enter or the space bar. So for example, if I come over here, I'm just going to create a new line. If I type google.com, www.google.com, and hit enter, Word instantly turns it into a hyperlink for me. There's nothing extra I had to do. I just had to type the hyperlink or the URL, and it turns it into a hyperlink. But what if we want to, make a group of words in our content into a link? So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the google.com there. If we want to make a group of words a link, we can do that first by selecting the text that you want to use as your link. And this could be, a phrase or the name of a web page or document. In our case, we're going to select the word SWOT analysis. Grab that text there. And then we want to go to the Insert tab and find the links group. So we're going to go to the Insert tab and find the links group, which is right here. And then we just want to click the link icon. And from here, you can enter the URL or file path for the link in the address bar of this pop-up window. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it www.swotanalysis.org. I'm going to hit OK. And there we go. We've got our link in there. It is important to note that when creating links, you'll want to make sure that the text you use for the link, it should be clear and descriptive. It should match the title of the page or file that the link is pointing to, or be very closely matched. You'll also want to avoid any vague phrases like click here, read more, or learn more, because those phrases don't provide meaningful context most of the time for users, especially those relying on screen readers. So you want to make sure that the link text you're selecting to turn into a hyperlink is descriptive, so that all users understand where that link is going to be taking them. Okay, so that's going to do it for my portion. Any questions so far before I hand it over to Melissa?
It looks like we have one in the chat.
Okay. If you wanted to end a column in the middle of the page and continue typing as normal, what is the correct way to go about that? I'm not sure I really understand that. Is that to have like one column in the middle of the page?
I interpret it, and Michaela, feel free to unmute and speak up. I interpreted it as you wanted to maybe have two columns for a while and then go back to the default one column format. Is that maybe what you meant, or feel free to clarify for us?
Yeah, so
yes,
maybe
that's correct.
So maybe you have 5 columns, and then so you go 2 and then 1.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you bring up do you mind bringing up that layout columns dialog again?
Yep.
There, Tyler. So if you go to more columns at the bottom, when you set up your columns, you'll see at the bottom it says apply to. So you can apply it to a section, you can apply it to the whole document, or you can apply it to this point forward. So that's going to control kind of where your columns start and end. For me, I like to do it kind of the way that Tyler showed. I like to have everything typed out, because then I can just select that text, and maybe I want to put it in 2, maybe I want to put it in 3. I might try a couple different options to see what looks best and where I like the spacing. So I typically have my content there and then select it, and then that by default applies it just to that section that's selected. So that's probably the easiest way to just take a chunk and make it columns, and then keep what comes after it as the default, one column layout. And you can switch back and forth. You can use columns in multiple parts of your document, but to me, that's the easiest way to do it, because then by default, it will just apply it to the section that you have selected. If you want your whole document, like maybe it's more of a magazine-y style thing and you want the whole thing in 2 columns, then you can apply that to the entire document. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share.
Thanks, Melissa.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to pick up here where Tyler led off. So I have the document, I've got the columns, I've got the headings and the links and the lists that he added. And we're going to focus on images and tables, and then we're going to learn how to check this document for accessibility and how to convert it to a PDF. So let's get started with images. Images can be logos, charts, graphs, diagrams, photos, anything that adds visual interest or decoration or information to a document. So as we talked about, the requirement for images is that they need to have alternate text. That alternate text is a text-based representation of the information contained in an image, and it allows people who can't see an image to understand its purpose or meaning. So let's start by inserting our first image into our document, and then we'll talk about the appropriate alternate text. I'm going to start here at the top. I'm going to make a new space above my heading level 1 annual report. I'm going to make sure it's not a heading though. I don't want my image itself to be a heading. I'm going to go to the Insert tab on the ribbon And in the illustration sections, I'm going to choose pictures and my device. I've got my image saved somewhere out here. It's in my folder. Here it is. I'm going to choose it, insert it. It's just going to drop into my document. And now I can do what I want to it. You know, I might want to do a little resizing. I might want to center it. I might want to, you know, just make it look the way I want it to look. So right now I'm going to make it just a little bit smaller, and I'm also going to choose on the ribbon to center it. None of that's going to affect the accessibility of the image. I don't care where it is. I don't care if you make it bigger and smaller. I don't care if it has a border. I don't care if it has a shadow around the outside of the image. Doesn't matter. The alternate text is what matters for screen reader users. So to add alternate text to the image, I can go to my picture format tab, and I have an alt text option that's going to open a pane over here on the right. I can also right click on my image and go to view alt text. There are multiple ways to get there. We're just showing you the ones in the ribbon so that you've got kind of a consistent way to get everywhere. Okay, so in the alt text pane, which unfortunately I cannot make larger, I can make it wider, but I can't make the text bigger. It basically says, how would you describe this object and its content to someone who is blind? And it says they recommend a couple sentences. There's a button to generate alt text for me. And then there's also an option to mark the image as decorative. So whenever I have an image that is not decorative, that is an image that conveys some kind of meaning, I need to have alternate text. And when my image contains words, then I need to make sure my alternate text contains the exact same words that show in the image. So for my alternate text, I'm simply going to type the word Iowa. I capitalized it as I normally would. Remember, we use kind of standard capitalization and punctuation. Another thing that I did is I did not use the word image or picture or photo in my alternate text, or even the word logo. Remember, JAWS, the screen reader, is going to say this is a graphic. All screen readers are going to say that. We don't need to know, you know, that it's a photo versus an image versus a picture, whatever. I just want the exact same words that match. I also do not need to describe the image. I don't need to say Iowa in kind of a dark teal blue colors. The O has a yellow sun on our horizon with green and a gray road leading to it. We don't care. Again, going back to how would you describe this object and its content to someone who is blind or low vision? And my example I like to use is, how would I describe this image to someone over the phone? Say the scenario is your supervisor is on her way to the office. She's driving, calls you, hey, I'm headed to a meeting. I need to know what's in this document. I was supposed to read it before. I didn't have time. Can you give me the information while I'm driving? So I would say, yeah, this is Iowa annual report. Then I would go on, you know, it's got SWOT analysis section and in there, blah, blah, blah. I would not say, oh yeah, there's an Iowa logo that's blue with a sun and the right, not essential information. It looks pretty, it's nice, but the meaning of that image is to identify this as an Iowa document. So Iowa is the alternate text. A note while we're here, never use the generate alt text for me button. I'll use it to show you how terrible it is. It says a blue letter W on a white background. AI generated content may be incorrect. Yes, it's extremely incorrect. It's terrible. Never use it. It's never going to know how to do it. If it were that easy, I don't know, our whole lives would be a lot easier, right? If machines could do everything for us, but it doesn't work. So do not use that button. Simply type here in the text box and use standard punctuation and spelling, grammar, everything else. All right, let's get our next image in. We've got one here underneath our judicial district stuff. So let me just get my cursor there, make a new line. And this is where we have inserted our Capital, that's it right there. So this is just kind of the skyline of the Capitol building in Des Moines there. It looks pretty, it's nice. It kind of identifies us as being an Iowa thing. It kind of fills the space nicely at the bottom of our page. It's not a meaningful image. If my boss had called me and I had just read all those judicial district info to her, I certainly would not stop and say, oh, there's a picture and it looks like it's springtime and, you know, the grass is green and the dome's golden shiny. We don't care. I would just skip over that completely. And that is a way to help you identify that that image is decorative. It does not have meaning. So I can resize it. I can move it around. I can do what I want as far as making it look the way I want. But the important thing for his accessibility is in the alt text pane, I am going to check the mark as decorative checkbox. And you will remember that tells the screen reader it's safe to ignore. It will skip over it like it's not there. And we'll see that later on when we convert this to a PDF, that also doesn't get converted to the PDF. It stays in the physical view, but it doesn't go into the tags. All right. We've got one more image, and this one is at the very bottom under goal progress. We have a chart. This is a chart that I generated in Excel. So I'm going to grab it out of Excel and paste it in. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So I've got my little table there that I use to create this image. I'm going to select the image. And by that, I mean, I'm going to click on the outside border. You know, I can select little pieces of data, but I don't want to do that. I want to get the whole thing. So I'm going to click on the outside border. I can maybe zoom in a little bit for you so you can see that better. So I didn't click there. I clicked here and I've got it selected so I can copy that image. I can do that up here in my ribbon. I can use copy. I can use, yeah, you can do it in the ribbon. You can right click and copy. You can use Control-C on your keyboard to copy. Whatever way you prefer. I'm going to switch back to my Word document. And I'm going to, under the Home tab of the ribbon, I'm going to drop down my paste options. I'm going to see what my choices are for how I can paste this image into my document. So if I hover over each one, it gives me some options. I can see what they actually are. So the first one is use destination themes and embed workbook. I've also got the option to keep source formatting and embed workbook. I can use destination themes and link the data, or keep source formatting and link the data, or I can insert it. I guess it goes down to the next page, so we can't see it right now, or I can insert it as a picture. I do not want to choose any of the embed or link options. This document's going to get converted to a PDF to be distributed, and the users will not have access to that source data, or they won't be able to link or embed. They won't be able to get that source data. So I'm going to choose picture, and that's going to drop it in. Again, feel free to resize it. Feel free to make it look the way you want, center it, whatever. What we care about, again, is the alternate text. And so again, I want you to think about what you would say to someone who you were talking to over the phone. Yeah, where are we on goal progress? Okay, well, for goal 1, the prior year is 20 equal, and I'm going to use the equal sign just because I like that. 25%, and then the current year, I've got 70%. And then I'm going to continue on down and do that for each goal. I'm going to give the prior and the current year. I have this written up already. One, so you don't have to watch me type, but also you might be able to see it a little better, what I've done here. So I have goal 1, I used a colon, prior year equals 25%, comma, space, current year equals 70%. There's no right or wrong answer to the way you format this. You might, maybe you have things all on the same line. I like to have them separate just because I can see them better. It makes it easier to copy and paste. You could say prior year instead of equal sign, maybe you want the word is. What you do want to avoid is being too verbose, right? I don't need to have full sentences. I don't need to say, for goal 1, the prior year progress value equal is 25%. You know, for goal 1, the current year, I want to be concise. Again, think about what you'd say to someone over the phone. You would be as kind of simple but complete as possible, right? So this gives all the same information that's displayed in that chart in a simple format. And I'm going to copy and paste it in. And that way it makes it a little easier. So feel free to type your alternate text in Word or somewhere else and copy and paste. Not in, I mean, in Word in the body and copy and paste. This is small, it's hard to see, especially if you're dealing with values, and you know, you might want to make sure. And writing alternate text is as much as an art as a science. It's something you practice and you get better at. You can definitely consult with your coworkers, write some alternate text for the first time, share it with your coworkers, say, what do you think? How would you do this? What changes would you make? And work collaboratively on some of those things, especially if you have things like charts and graphs that get updated, you know, maybe on a quarterly or a monthly basis, and you're going to be updating that alt text, or, you know, maybe different parts of your department have similar things and you want to be consistent as possible with your alternate text. You know, I could, you know, there are a bunch of numbers in here. I can't just list the information. You know, before we said if your image contains text, have the same text in the alternate text. So that's true here, but I also have to make those connections. I have to say how goal 1 is related to prior year, you know, 25%. I have to put those values together. Let's see, we've got someone who said, I use Excel a lot for tables and charts, and then I copy and paste to the Word document. Yeah, so we're going to do a table here in a minute, but the process I just showed you for charts, regardless of what kind of chart it is, you're going to want to create the chart in Excel, just like you always do. I like to make my fonts big enough, hopefully, that people can read them easily. So I do try to make sure I get at least 12 points if I can. I would say, you know, 10 at the least if you can. So get everything the way you want it to look, all your colors set, everything done. Then again, you're just going to select the outer border of that. You're going to copy. And then when you're in Word, you're going to use the paste option on the home tab of the ribbon, and you're going to use the last choice. You're going to use picture to drop it in. I will answer the table part in just one second here. I just want to make sure anybody else have any questions about images and alt text before we move on. I do have one more thing I want to say. Feel free to ask your questions. I do have one more thing I want to say, and that is if you have the exact same content that is presented in the image also available in text, whether that's like a narrative paragraph or a data table, then that image can be considered decorative and be marked as decorative in Word. So if I have this, and then immediately after it, I have a paragraph that includes all the same information, it has each goal, it has each year, it has each value in words below it, whether that's a paragraph, a data table, whatever. If that is exactly the same, then I can mark my image as decorative, because otherwise the user is just going to be hearing the same thing twice. Not necessary. But maybe I only talk about goal 1 and I don't talk about the other goals, or maybe I only talk about the current year and not the prior year. Well, that's not going to have the exact same information. So if it's only partial information, you still need to have complete alternate text for your image. But if the image has the exact same content as what is presented in a text way, then you can mark it as decorative. So I do want to say that. All right, let's talk about tables. We have a data table that was under this metrics and measures heading. I want to insert my table. I can do this a couple different ways. I can go up to insert on my ribbon. I can choose table. I can kind of set the size, right, of my table. And then, you know, I can just go in and start typing into that table. If you have a table that is already created in a Excel spreadsheet, which is what I have done, if I can find it here, sorry, got too many things open. So I've got a table that I made. There it is. This is the content from that we saw before. I'm just going to select the content, the cells with the content. I'm going to copy again. I'm going to switch over to Word. Again, under Home and Paste, I'm going to look at my choices. I can keep the source formatting, which kind of looks a little weird. I can use destination styles, which is plain, but gets a little closer to what I had in mind. I can link and keep the source formatting, link and use destination styles. Those should sound familiar. We don't want to do that because, again, that content links are not going to be available. I can insert it as an image. I definitely don't want to do that because I've got text. And if I turn it to an image, I got to write all that text over in my alt text, right? I don't want to do that. We know tables are very easily navigable by screen reader users. So I want to take advantage of that. And I definitely don't want to keep the text only, then I lose all my table structure. So I'm going to choose the use destination styles option. That one is always it's going to get me the closest. It still doesn't necessarily look pretty. I'm going to put a page break in here just so we get it all on one page. You know, it doesn't look great and I still want to make some changes to the way it looks, but it keeps the structure and it gets me there. And another important thing to remember is we're obviously only using tables for tabular data. So tabular data is data where each data cell has a row and a column header that kind of labels it or names it. You know, we talked about not using tables to lay out, just to lay things out like columns or just making a lot of times you see it for forms, and we'll do a whole session on forms where we learn about that. But we've got our tabular data, we've pasted it using destination styles, and then I can do what I want again for the looks. Doesn't really matter, right? Maybe I want my header row here. Let's see. Trouble getting my menu there. Not sure why. Sure what's happening, but I can't see my menu. Maybe I'll get to it this way instead. So I'm just going to, no, not there. There we go, borders and shading. I'll go here. And maybe I just want some shading under that. I'm going to make it pretty dark there under my header row. And, you know, maybe I want to bold something. I can bold things. You can do what you want. You can change the direction. You can, you know, align things. You can center them. You can right align them. You can left align them. Do whatever you want inside the cells. I don't really care. Really, for accessibility in Word with tables, there's very little you can do to break it. It kind of comes along for the ride. So as long as you have your table in here and it's evenly structured, that is, it's a simple table, you don't have cells that span across columns or rows, then the accessibility is going to come along for the ride. There's a question in the chat, should the title of a table be a document header rather than a cell in the table header marked as a header? Yes. Good question. And you'll see that's kind of what I've done here, right? The name of this table is metrics and measures used to monitor ICN operations. I've got that marked as a heading level 2, and it's part of my document. It's not part of my table. It's not part of my table because it is not tabular data. A lot of times you'll see people do something like this. They'll have a row above, you know, they might merge all those cells together and type the heading text in there. That's a no-no. That's non-tabular data that is in the table. So instead, we're going to have it as a heading outside of it. It will also help people navigate to that section of your document. One of the things that I'm just going to mention today, and we'll see more in our Acrobat section, is bookmarks. Headings come across into PDF documents as bookmarks, so another good reason to use headings and have them before your table. Okay, one other note while we're here, I changed the background color of that, the row or column headers to a dark gray, and I've got black text on top of that. And it's really kind of not easy to read. And I do want to mention color contrast, because color contrast is very difficult to change once you've converted a document to PDF. So you want to think about color contrast while you're creating your document. So in this case, you know, I've got black text, a little bit of this dark blue text. I can use what's called a color contrast checker. I'm going to show one. It's linked in your slides, but there are many out there. None of them are better than the other. This is just the one I like to use. So this color contrast analyzer allows me to sample a color, and sometimes let me open it in the same window. I moved it from one screen to another, and sometimes that causes it to get a little bit lost. There we go. It's almost okay. So I'm going to take that annual. It's the same color as the Iowa there, and you can see my color contrast ratio is 7:1, and my goal is 4.5:1. So the highest contrast is 21:1. That's black on white, or vice versa. The lowest contrast is 1:1. That's no contrast. So I just need to get to 4.5:1. Right there, I'm at 7:1. I'm going to check this one here. I've got the foreground is black. And let's see, I've got kind of this dark gray background. Yeah, so here I'm just below 3:1, so that's not good. So what I'm simply going to do is I'm going to change my text in my column headers to white to get better contrast. So if you do change anything, or you know, like you add a background color to a table cell, you're going to want to make sure that your colors are good. And when you're setting up your styles, make sure that you use dark enough colors. After you pay attention for a while, it's going to be very easy for you to catch on and notice when, hey, that doesn't look quite right. That doesn't look like it's going to meet. Obviously, pastel colors on a white background are really hard, and dark text on a dark background. But keep that in mind when you're creating your document, because it's very difficult to fix down the road. Our accessibility checker will also check for that. Another thing we can do is, if we go into our font, whoops, wrong one, sorry. If we go into our fonts here, depending on your version of Word, you may or may not have this option to turn on high contrast only options. And that kind of limits your choice to colors that will work well with the background, versus having, you know, darker colors available when you've got a darker background. So that's another tool you can use to help you pick good colors. The question, so expanding on that last question, should goals, strategies, actions, etc., be marked as a header in the table? I understand now, Jessica. That happens automatically. So when this is converted to PDF, it will already assume that the first row of the table contains your header cells, and that the first column of your table contains your row cells. So when you're working in Word, that automatically comes along for a ride. You don't have to do anything special to mark those as headers. Good question. All right, so I've got my table in. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so I can kind of eyeball. Got some page breaks in. I'm not sure why that's not fitting. I must have a little bit, maybe my image is a little bit bigger than it was in my previous version. So I'll make that a little smaller just to get it all on 2 pages here. And same thing with your size of your columns. You know, you can change your size of your columns. None of that's going to affect the accessibility either. Question, perhaps this is covered for Acrobat or PowerPoint. What about the red-green colorblind for charts, etc.? Sometimes these colors are used for contrast. Yeah, so the accessibility standards talk about two things. They talk about the color of foreground text against its background. So that's kind of what we've been talking about here. There is also a standard that is about colors for interactive elements. So it's referring more to things like icons or buttons. And it has a different color contrast ratio that you have to meet for those. It doesn't have anything specific to red-green color blindness, other than obviously you don't want to use color alone to indicate anything. So this document's maybe not the best example, but you don't want to have, you know, something like, you know, I wouldn't want to have, you know, something like this, the red list item is important, right? I don't want something like this where I say the red list item is important. You want to be able to identify things in other ways. So, you know, maybe you'll say the red and, you know, asterisk list item is important. And then I can add an asterisk to this list item as well. So now I have color and a symbol that both tell me. So if I can't see the color, I can use the symbol. I know that's not exactly what you were asking, but for definitely when you're making things like charts, you know, you want to have good contrast. You know, here I want to have good contrast between my green and white and my blue and white. And we will talk about that more. And we talk about it more in our maps and data visualizations session. We talk more about colors and spacing and labeling and things like that. So that might be more in the realm where you'd find us discuss that. All right, I'm running out of time. Let's run our accessibility checker and get this converted over into a PDF. So I'm going to go under my review tab. I'm going to choose check accessibility. Thankfully, because I did everything correctly, it says looks good, no issues found. If you forgot to add alt text, maybe you were going to come back and add alt text to an image, you had to talk to somebody first and you forgot to do that, it will flag it here. You can click on it. It takes you right to the alt text. You can type it in, save, and go. So it's really helpful for finding things like where you missed that, or maybe you have a heading that's out of order. Maybe I go from a heading 1 to a heading 4 just because of the way it looks. Instead of changing my heading 2, it will notify you of that. It will also tell you if you have hard to read text, if your contrast isn't great, it will do its best to flag that. So there are a couple messages here that depending on the version of Word you had, you might be getting a little bit different accessibility checker or accessibility assistant than what we're seeing here on my shared screen. And if you have questions about those, feel free to bring them to office hours and we can talk through them, because the checker has evolved over time and it's actually gotten a lot better. So if you have an older version, it might be flagging things that aren't really a problem. But you can keep this open as you work too, and it will check things as you go. So you can kind of decide if you want to keep it open and have it kind of in the corner while you're working, reminding you of things, or if you want to check it at the end. Totally up to you. But it is a good tool. It's worth using. It's great for helping you find when you forgot to do something, like, for example, adding alt text. All right. Let's talk about how to convert this PDF document or this Word document into an accessible PDF document. The main thing is we don't want to lose what we've done, right? So a lot of times folks will go to File and they will go to Print and they'll say, oh, great, I'm going to print this as a PDF. That's the way I create my PDFs. Well, when you do that, that creates the physical view only. that basically creates a picture of your PDF. It does not have the content layer and it doesn't have the tags layer. And that means all the work we did here will not come across into the PDF document. So we do not want to print to PDF. Everybody has access to it. It's easy to do, and people are in the habit of doing it. We don't want to do that anymore. We also do not want to choose save as and then change our file type to PDF. We don't want to do that either, because that does not carry everything over. You'll get a lot closer than you would with print to PDF, but it doesn't bring everything over consistently. So the option we want to use, which is designed specifically for converting to PDF, is this Save as Adobe PDF option. Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to actually click on it yet. Just trying to get focused to it. So Save as Adobe PDF is what we want. You will not see this option if you do not have Adobe Acrobat Pro installed on your machine. You do need Adobe Acrobat Pro to make documents accessible in Acrobat. So if you do not have it, then you will not want to convert this document to PDF. You'll want to give it to someone who does and have them save it as a PDF. So if you don't have that option, then someone else needs to convert it for you. If you do have that Save as Adobe PDF option, then you'll want to choose that. I'm going to just say, okay, leave it as is. It wants me to save. I haven't saved in a while. I should have done that already. So let me save my document. Now it's going to go through the conversion process. It's going to open in Acrobat so that I can start working with it. And this is actually where we will pick up with this document in our next session, in our Acrobat session. We'll talk about how to finish off and check this document, make sure it's all good to go. And then we'll also talk about other problems you might encounter with documents you did not create and how to fix those in Acrobat. All right, we've got just a couple more minutes. Any questions that I have not covered that you guys still have right now? Back to our slideshow here. I'm going to just say a couple quick words about Google Docs. And again, you have these slides so you can read more. Know that Google Docs cannot be directly made into accessible PDFs. If you have a Google document, you can still do all the things that we did. You know, the way you get to them is a little bit different, but you can still add headings to your document. You can still add alternate text. You can still do those things in Google Docs, but once you are done, you will have to, instead of just downloading it as a PDF document, you need to download the Google Doc as a Microsoft Word document in between. So you'll go from Google Doc to Microsoft Word. You'll look at it, make sure visually it looks the way you want. You'll run your checker, and then you'll convert it to Adobe PDF. You have an extra step if you're starting with a Google Doc. Are there non-Adobe products that can create an accessible PDF? I'm not sure if you meant non-Adobe or non-Office, but yes, Word, for example, is one. And there are I don't know other PDF generators. I don't know if maybe you're thinking of online generators or if you have something specific in mind. Usually, no. I would say other than Word, Word's probably the only thing where you can get all the way there. Even then, you'll still have a couple manual checks. There are other products that will get you part of the way there, but you're still going to have to do work in once it's in Acrobat in PDF to make that PDF accessible. Just this kind of builds on that, I guess, just even talking about other Office software, you know, you can still use some of the same techniques, but you cannot. But you can't do everything necessarily in those. For example, PowerPoint doesn't have styles. So we can't add headings, you know, of different levels in PowerPoint. That's just not something we can do. It's always something we're going to have to do in Acrobat. But with other Office software, you always can save as Adobe PDF. and we'll, we have sessions on all of those to show you how to get as far as you can. Are there alternatives for people who do not have Acrobat Pro? No. For remediating PDF documents, you need to have Acrobat Pro. There are some, I don't know if they're called plugins or software or whatever, like Common Look, that will help you remediate documents. But to get all of the checks in and to fix all of the issues that you might possibly have, you will need Acrobat Pro. Acrobat Pro is required for creating accessible PDFs. Bluebeam is a generator for PDFs. Someone mentioned, I feel like I've heard that before or seen some documents before. If you have a PDF that's generated from Bluebeam that you would like me to take a look at, feel free to send it to the email address. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Accessibility@msfnw.com. I'll type it in the chat too. If you send it to me, I'll take a look at it and we can look at it at a office hours session and see how well Bluebeam did. We can look at that together and see, how far it gets us and what we need to do afterwards. So feel free to kick one of those our way. Just in summary, PDFs need to be accessible. If possible, we're going to do it, make it as accessible as possible in the native format. In this case, Word is what we learned today. We're going to use those things that are built into Word, and then we're going to convert it the right way, and that's going to save our work. So I went a minute or so over. Thank you guys so much for your time today, your attention. We had lots of great questions, and hope we can continue having some good discussion tomorrow at 9 a.m. and every Wednesday at our office hours. And we do have an InDesign session coming up in the next couple of weeks. We've got a redo of our Acrobat session, and then we've got some forms and tables sessions coming up. So we've got a whole calendar. So check those out if you're interested, and we hope to talk to you guys soon. One more note, Corel is another program. Oh, wow, Corel. I haven't heard of Corel in a long time. Yeah, we'd have to take a look at what results from that Corel. So Ariel, if you have something you want to share and we can take a look at it, we'd be happy to do that. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Melissa.
Bye-bye.